it was an announcement in the news back when Trump first took office that there was a British ship that he told they can't dock in the harbor outside of D.C. no more. The reason that is because we had to sink their battleship. But first we had to get rid of the guard ship. The guard ship in the bay represented the guardian ship of the Vatican that was given to the Empire of Britain, right? And they had to keep the Guardian, which was a guard ship, in the bay. Now, the guard ship is protecting the ship that ran ashore, the Plymouth Rock, the Mayflower, the good ship Plymouth, right? Malcolm told us we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us, right? Because he was telling us about the international complaint that got us in this condition where we had to come up with an alternative solution than bloody war. This was the George Washington challenge. But first, they had to make a blood sacrifice. In a book called the Bible, they got what's called the blood of the righteous, or first blood of the righteous. The first blood of the righteous in sorcery and blood magic mean when you invade a land, you got to get the highest ranked individual you can capture and kill him and spill his blood and use his blood to write the blood oath contract. This blood oath contract, we call it the United States Constitution, not the one that's in the Library of Congress. That was the first Constitution. This is a secondary Constitution. Now, this is the Boston Massacre after the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party, the T is the square. This is telling you that it's a hangman game about to take place. In other words, it's about to be a public execution as represented by the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was the prelude to the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre culminated with the death of Crispus Attucks, and they have to tell us he was the first person to die, to shed blood for this nation. No, he was not. He was the first one of us to shed blood, that they can put us in a stupor by writing the Constitution in his blood. Right? Now, they still have to go on a killing spree because they got to get rid of everybody that remember the old ways. This is where you bring in your Black Brotherhood of Spain, right? El Español Hermanos de Negros, and your KKK, because they are the origin of the KKK. The regalia of the KKK comes from the Black Brotherhood of Spain, which was established by Moors in the Dark Ages. Okay, now, these people in the South, by the tribes, is referred to as the Black Hand, because the leader of the raids always had on that white regalia, KKK regalia, but the Black Hand was always hanging from under that white robe, and it wasn't no glove. Only thing they can tell the antiquity to identify who their attacker was to tell them it was the Black Hand that hang from under the white robe. Later, they gave pale faces black robes to mirror flip the circumstance. And this is where you get your Judiciary Act, your false judiciaries under the 1863 Charter of Savannah, Georgia, by the French King George, who became King of England. He told them to take everything from us using the law. Well, the law that they given us is predicated upon levies and liens. The lien is the contract. Because when you lean, you at a slant. The contract means against the tract or against the land. But you the living land. But they want to tell you the living man because they want to separate you from Mother Earth. They want to tell the son that he don't have to honor the mother from which he came as long as he can get the current that you can see, that paper, the green. The green is just the dye marker, right, that you put in the water to see where the current take it. And that way you can know what tributaries is coming from where in order to find out how you get into the mainstream. The mainstream is the old Mississippi, but we think the mainstream means the common collective of the pop culture. The mainstream is the Mississippi because the old Mississippians is the oldest blood of the land, with first in time being first in line, having first right to the earth rights in order for one of the sons to restore the mothers. We remember the codes, but we have to figure out how to apply them in modern times with modern circumstances and situations. But we have to go back to the old ways in order to understand the redemption process. So they gave us the grandfather clause. They told you it was a Mrs. clause with your Christmas story, but they never told you that there was a grandmother clause in law, because the grandmother clause is tribal. That's why they keep erasing everything that the tribal mothers do on the land, right? If Lucy Parsons would have had the right strategist behind her, she would have told her, she would have sat in the sacerdotal seat in Philadelphia, she would have overthrew the conjure. But since she didn't have nobody tell her, and Empress Verdiasi didn't have nobody tell her, they couldn't stop it. Red House. Now we got to revert back to the Blue House. The Mississippi Delta Blue. Delta Blue is the Marines. Simple fact. The Marines come from the Delta as the frogmen of the Navy, which was a special forces tribe from the land. But we don't know the history of this stuff, so we thinking that these is foreigners. They operating as foreigners, but they using our old stuff to their advantage. When any special forces operations was taught and trained from the land in warfare on the land. And this is why they kept hiring people from the land and putting other people on the land that don't belong to the land in order to confuse how warfare is fought. Right? Now, once they do all of this, it's a scrambled egg now. It's going to be almost impossible to figure this stuff out. Especially with you add the paper genocide, the Trail of Tears, the Indian train that don't nobody talk about no more. And I used to hear about it all the time when I was a little boy. When the old people used to be talking about, yeah, I remember they came down and told my grandma, you got an Indian train coming. You going on? She said, I ain't getting on no Indian train. I'm staying right here on my land. That's what the people was calling it in the South. It was called the Indian train, but none of us want to get on it. And as they went through, they incorporated the children from the Indian boarding schools into the mix with the very few of us who actually went into the land. This is how they was able to develop our old culture, because they had us teaching it to them. Right? They all talk that talk. All them $5 Indians be coming out like I just blocked one today on my Facebook page, and I don't block nobody. You gotta really be far for me to block you. Right? But when he wanna try to convince me I'm from Africa and he from Siberia, then we ain't got nothing to talk about. I'm not the import. Right? I'm the original. I had a conversation a few years ago with a Moor, and he was like, which tribe you from? I said, all of them. He said, what you mean? I said, my bloodline is the root stock of all tribes that's native to this land. that's original to this land. Old Mississippian blood. Aztec or Inca, Olmec, I don't care what you call them. They the same people. And we ain't never went nowhere. We still here. That's why Tupac can talk to me in a song and tell me way more than you can read in the book. And the song only 3 minutes long on average. Right? He can get more information to all of the chiefs on the land in one song than you can put in a whole book. Brother Jay, cold talker like a mug. You go listen to Brother Jay, and if you can understand the Egyptology he using, the tribal lingo he using, and the way that he's using it, he can educate you on your condition. Raquel, one of the greatest to ever do it. Follow the leader. Brother said, digging my ducks, never dug him. He couldn't follow the leader long enough, so I drug him. In the danger zone, he should have raged his zone. Space in the place, it's the cuts to rage the tone. It's one R in the alphabet. It's a 4-letter word, and it's about to get more complex from one rhyme to the next. Every beat be easy on the flex. Right? They can tell us stuff. Ice Cube. He know he had Afro Chief. Right? We call him Afro Chiefs because the hairstyle now was referred to as an Afro. That's not what they was called in antiquity. They was just called Mississippians. Mississippi is not a European word, but it's coded and loaded with code. But if you don't know the code, you will never flip the message out of the code. And I ain't going to go into decoding Mississippi because there's a lot of people that think I'm just making stuff up. They'll figure it out one day, and I'm going to be using it to my advantage the whole time. And when they figure it out, they're going to say the only way that he could have did all that, he had to know what this means.
Yeah, Raw, that's one of Raw receipts he sent me earlier.
So look, let's go over a little bit of that. Now, there's some symbolism in the actual video that a lot of us probably overlooked. Like you didn't see that picture of Yaqub on the side of the church. What? With his big ass head. I'm going to tell you something else you probably overlooked. Earlier in the video, they had showed the dude on the painting, the Moor, had the pale lady with the puppet strings to her. Remember I was telling you about blackface?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Black face, white hand.
Look, go over it. Let's go play the video.
I got it into loaded into screen.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Pause.
All right, so that picture that we were just looking at.
I had it loaded it up straight. Yeah.
Right, that picture that we was just looking at, that was showing them making them deals around the corner. Almost all the faces are melanated except one. If you play a little longer, you're going to see, I'm going to let it go this time, let it go till you see the puppet master pulling the strings of the pale lady. You see Yaqub?
Yeah, I seen him next to that other picture.
Right behind the checkerboard floor. And we noticed as soon as he said the ancient ones who know the game, the checkerboard floor popped up. That's not a coincidence.
They're not saying the Felicians. They saying with a V, right? They saying Venetians.
Venetians, yeah. That's the ones who settled Venice. The Venetians settled Venice. The Etruscans settled Tuscany. Right.
I read it.
Right. So there's two different groups. Those are the ones was sent in as in their children to civilize the European, but they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But this is a whole nother story. I don't want to go back down that road. But the whole thing they were showing you in there was how they was using infiltration, bribery, and deception the whole time. Those are different kind games. This is why you say a dude that's book smart and street smart, the most dangerous one. Because he can see the game, the times they play in the corporate world, in the business world, in the politics. the average person can't see the kind in the game, so they continue to play the game in fraud.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you participate in the fraud, then you liable as a participant to fraud. So when the fraud come tumbling down, your world come tumbling down around you because you tied into the fraud. This is why we have to use the oral tradition to override the paperwork, because the paperwork is a paper chain designed to trap you, and the ones who sell paperwork are slave catchers. Because when you do the paperwork, in order to put somebody on notice with their own system, right? They're not gonna honor that.
That's what I was thinking about too. That other
right.
part.
So it was like what I posted the other day. When the whole system is acting in fraud and you catch it, which one of them gonna give up their lifestyle in order to honor your recognition of the fraud? No, they all acting in fraud. They can't go against the fraud they're acting in because you figured it out. But the more people coattail you pull, the more people abandon the fraud, because that's the only defense to a crime. That the abandonment defense of a crime of inclusion. I mean, it's a conspiracy, a group. When you discover the fraud, you're supposed to cease and desist all activities associated with the fraud, right? The only problem with the way that the system is set up through adhesion contracts, even when you think you're stepping away from the fraud, you stepping back into the fraud. So you still giving them jurisdiction, trying to assert that they don't have jurisdiction, right? You got to wait till they kidnap you first. Then you got to be a master of the habeas corpus, the great writ, right? The last person suspended it was George Bush, suspended the power of the writ. But the Constitution said that no act of government shall suspend the power of the great writ. So it was supposed to be null and void, but the courts stopped hearing habeas corpuses once you're done is done. They can only hear over one time. And then they didn't have to accept the habeas corpus. Before they had to at least acknowledge the habeas corpus and tell you why they're not going to review the case. Right? So the suspension of the writ means that you trapped in the position of servitude. This is why, like, I'm not on no probation, parole, none of that. I did my time to walk down my parole, right? So I'm no longer a bond servant.
Mm-hmm.
All of the ones that are still locked up is bond servants. Knowingly or unknowingly, it don't matter. Everybody locked up is a bond servant. That means that there's a bond that you forced to be in service to, that's tied to you through the government. Right? Now I can speak up for the ones in there where they use fraudulent means to ensnare them in their traps. Right? Because if you don't know how they trapped them, you won't know how to tell the people they got trapped. So they won't be able to see that they was never supposed to be there, and that alone should be sufficient to free them. Like, they didn't say Larry told the guy, hey, go shoot this dude. That's not what he was in there for. Larry was in there because they said the dude believed that Larry needed this done, so he just took it on himself to go do it. That's what Larry went to prison for. It's called influence. That law in Illinois has since been taken off the books. Right? So the law that Larry is in the state case on is no longer a law in Illinois. Fruit of the poison tree apply. When you repeal the law, you release the man.
Right. That's a fact. Right? They with the weed. With the weed.
Unless you fall under Dred Scott.
Dang.
An outlaw tribe. You got to think about that.
That's right, Rod.
You got, in order for them to continuously hold you, they are acknowledging the fact that you are a tribal leader with no treaty. And they're going to force you into a treaty agreement in order to liberate you from your bondage. And that's why Larry been in there that long, because he won't do contract business with the government. And they know this.
Yeah, he said it
The same with today, Jeff Ford. He wouldn't do business with the government. That whole case against him, the terrorism case, is the same case they used to murder Prince Lowe. It's the same case, the same actors trying to trap another prince up after they took down the king. He not gonna fall for that. And when he didn't fall for it, they murdered Prince Lowe on the west side. Chicago know what I'm talking about. They lied on Jeff. They brought in some people who supposed to be code crackers, and they figured out the language of the Keystones, and they said that Jeff was giving them orders in coded messages, right? But the messages don't match what they telling you they seeing.
Yeah, they said that he said go get a bazooka, or all this crazy shit.
Jeff never said that.
Yeah,
right. They got documentaries on that stuff showing you how they set it up. Jeff was already locked up when that happened.
Yeah, CIA.
He was doing a meatball, but they used that because they couldn't afford to let him hit the streets again. He had learned too much, and he had become too influential in the city of Chicago. He would have been able to start organizing the tribes. Between him, King David, Larry Hoover, and Big Bull, and a few others, they would have been able to organize the whole city of Chicago in an instant to put down any resistance from the government aside from air bombing.
Damn.
You gotta remember, it was a dude that looked like us that ordered the bombing on Philadelphia Move, on the family of Giant Africa. Because they was going back to the tribal way of living. Because Giant Africa understood that you had to be one with the land in order for you to stay healthy and have longevity. And they trying to cut us off from the land and force us into labor camps. Right? They didn't have to blow them people up. But we don't remember the first part, though. Before they blew them up, they shot them up. We forgot about that part, though. They were sending bullets in there with women and children hiding for their life before they dropped the bombs.
Damn, boy.
We not paying attention. They never stopped warring against us. Right? We trying to follow what they call in Islam Sirata Mustaqim, the straight and narrow way. The only way that you can get out of this without going to a raw, bloody warfare is by strategy alone. You have to out-strategize the enemy. Expose his fraud to the people. While you showing the people who's behind the fraud, what they doing with the receipts. Right? That's why these oral traditions are so important. Because under the oral tradition, we can use their written word to prove the corruption of their ways. We can show you they split tongue when they talking with two agendas. By they doing two different things in actuality. They signed treaties saying one thing, but their actions did another. That means they came in with two agendas. They lying. They spreading falsehood. Now, the ones who are unaware are the orphans who's growing up after they had murdered their parents and their grandparents with no information or no knowledge of self. Anybody that can figure any of it out, they getting lynched.
Oh, and being a traitor, really, to me.
They are the ones who came from Europe and wanted to lay claim to this land. The tripartite system that he laid down is based on the 3 degrees of Masonry. So you have judicial, legislative, and executive. Executive is police, legislative is lawmakers, and judicial is the ones who mediate between the activities of the two. Right? So it's based on entered apprentice, fellow craft, master mason.
Right.
Right. That's Blue House. The principles of the Blue House is being laid down, but it's coming out of the 32-degree Scottish Rite Red House from Europe. Free white persons in law, Scottish bankers, having established the Scottish Bank off the Scottish Rite Freemasons. These are the ones who not only are they establishing the 3-party system or the 3-part system, they're also in the process of instituting a centralized banking cartel. They're going to use this banking cartel to deplete us of our wealth using debt and inflation. Debt is told to you as interest rate or taxation. And the inflation is taking it by changing the value of the currency as you lower the value of the goods. I mean, you lower the value of the currency, it increases the value of the goods. So that's cutting it off the top and the bottom. Pretty soon they're going to cut you all the way out.
Damn. Mafia.
Right. So the 3-part system had to be established in order to commercialize everything under the salvage right being applied through Uniform Commercial Code. What we know as the black codes is derivatives of the commercial code, right? Because it's to tell them how to handle the ones discovered dead walking around lost at sea. Right? C is a musical note. Right? So when you lost at sea, the only thing you can do is try to rise to E. Right? So it's a Mississippian blues connotation. To rise from C, class, to E is educated. Right? So everything means something, but it don't mean anything until you say it means something. By establishing firm definitions, you establish the criteria by which everybody will follow the system according to the understanding of the language that's been defined for them. When they realize that they speak more than one language simultaneously, and then they start realizing they're multilingual. Because we don't just speak in words. We speak in body language. We speak in facial expression, right? We speak by altering our positions, what they call gestures. And these messages carry through in the form of the hieroglyphics. So we can tell each other the story and wake everybody up from the slumber, right? So the George Washington, Crispus Attucks connection is the same as the Benjamin Banneker and Lewis and Clark. Right? Remember, they surveyors. Lewis and Clark is surveyors. Benjamin Banneker is what they call it, a jurist, an astrologer, astronomer, and he's a navigator. Big Ben Bay escorted Lewis and Clark on their expedition because they were supposed to serve as Peter and Paul. But all the time, the one who was doing the stealing was the one that was hiding behind Peter and Paul. Because he was a Jew.
They end up killing the dude later, 3 years after that. 1803, Louisiana Purchase. 3 years later, they give a story that some Knights of Templar raided Benjamin Banneker's house, stole paperwork, and he went on the walk, came back, he died. I don't believe. It seemed like to me he could have faked his death or something, Rod. What you think on that, Rod? Because the storyline.
His story is the same as Nikola Tesla's. His story is the same as several other prominent figures back then who was at odds. Jacques de Molay, the leader of the Templars, died the same way. They tried to force them to give them the sacred Masonic word, right? But the word is in wide open. It's in plain sight.
Right.
And they thinking that the secret is concealed secretly. The secret is in the open.
Right.
Because everything has to be in the public domain if you're going to play in this game of the gods we playing in. When the masters come through, it's cleanup time. Right? And now comes Judge Dredd, the final judge. Right? They call me in to find out what the problem is and why it's still operating. I'm the chief of last resort. I'm the one you ain't supposed to want to see. And that's why I get so much hate. Because they know I'm either going to fix the problem or I'm going to blow it all up. Ain't no two in-betweens. Either going to fix it or destroy it. This is fixable. Because everything around us now is predicated up on the maintenance of ignorance. Collective ignorance. And so we have to move into a public educational format. Right? We have to make the universe the new university. Our geology has to be walking the earth. Right? Exercising our geography. So we use what we can in our environment in order to read the continuum. The continuum is the repeat patterns and cycles. Every time you observe a repeat pattern, you can see the exit shortly thereafter. But if you don't never pick up on the patterns, you can't never get out of the game. That's what Michael Jackson was telling us in the Weirds. You can't win. You can't get out of the game. You can't win. Because you have to play it to the end. In the end is when the marathon got to come to an end. It got to be a finish line somewhere. Right? If it's a finish line, one of us gonna figure it out. So the Fairs Memorial is all of the Moors that was contracted under the Scottish Rite Freemason, 32 degree Scottish Rite Freemasons, to come from Europe and apply an interim jurisdictional government while we, the 50 chiefs, that's the 50 neckers. Or as Tupac would say, 50 niggas. Never ignorant, getting goals accomplished. Right? These 50 are on the mural as Inca chiefs with King Charles V. So you have to be able to identify both sides of the war. The white pieces on the chessboard and the black pieces. Because if you're going to play the pieces, you got to know where your dog at in the fight. And all you got to do is be able to establish a heart link connection, and you can tell if you got a dog in that fight in order to do your work. I just got a dog in a whole lot of fights. I'm a dog man. Dogs flip guys, and guys flip with dogs. Mirror flipping. It's a code. Zigzag zig. Postgraduate, removal of the lessons. End game is a resurrection. That's common sense. Right? Don't worry about the boys in the hood. They still bad boys, even if they is on death row. Because if they in Minnesota, they just rude boys, right? And the rude boy in Jamaica is a shotter. A shotter is a shooter, but the shooter don't shoot unless he can see the target. That's where the code of the sniper apply. To minimize collateral damage, the sniper is taught one shot, one kill. No wasted ammo. Just like there's no wasted food, beans and bullets. That's how you feed the poor. Protect the people and feed the people. There's nowhere on this earth where we're supposed to need food, clothing, and shelter. Right. Nobody's supposed to be out in the streets sleeping when we got a blizzard coming in, unless they choose to be out there by their own free will of a competent and sound man.
Right.
Right. In that case, they coming out there, they playing survival war games with themselves to see if they can survive the condition. We understand that. That's a rites of passage in the manhood. Know the blizzard coming and he got to go out there and have a shelter established, protection set up, and a way to feed himself, and all this got to be done before the blizzard dump on him. See, rites of passage. So we understand that sometimes they got to go out into the wilderness. But when he come back, he gonna be more of a man than he was before because he just activated a new level of superpower. Right? And that's why the wise young men isolate themselves from the public. Because the seed don't grow in the light. It grow in the dark. But it's sprout in the light.
Oh, that's fire right there. That's a quote. That's like a you can write that down. That's a biblical quote right there, boy. That's one of them keys to Solomon. You gave keys to Solomon. Ain't more money than the French if we put our money together. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought this across in the message to the black man too. So
it's
I'm
expired.
Go ahead.
But it's expired. Because that's when we were laboring for money. We gotta remember, we had a right, a jurisdictional right to the soil of the earth, to the minerals of the earth that come from the land that our big mamas come from. All that is being returned. Back then, the reason he was pushing the group economics the same as Claude Anderson is because it was a monopoly game being played. In the monopoly game, we started with no credits. Everybody else started with credits, properties, and money, and we started with nothing.
Damn.
Right? Because they system we wasn't part of, we wasn't supposed to get anything. It had nothing to do with us as outlaw tribes. Right? So the only people involved was the people at the table what became black millionaires and billionaires that you don't even know was over here. Because they took their money and they moved to their gated communities because they was the ones that was orchestrating the Plato's Republic as a constitutional institution in order to usurp it with sorcery. You heard what Baba said. They used sorcery. Well, the only way to break the spell of a spell is to expose it, what it is and how it works to the people that's being influenced by the energy of the spell. Right? Now, as you do a blood ritual, your blood on paper only lasts for a period of time and the blood fades away.
He said 200 years. What
on average. That's the story that John Dee was able to interpret from the writings of Jacques de Molay. John D is a pseudonym. He wasn't a real, he wasn't, that's not his real name, whoever he was. But whoever he was used the name John D because the sorcery that he got came from the writings of the assassination of Jacques de Molay, the Templar. Right? So he take his writings, he tell Queen Elizabeth about the blood oath. It's a Babylonian ritual blood rite in order to compel the people to follow you by using the blood of their leader.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they was doing. Certain leaders, according to the rules of the game, they not allowed to kill them, but they could usurp them and block them from the throne. What do usurp mean? Jacobin.
Mm-hmm.
They can jack you for your
Yakub.
right. Now, Yakub is shortened is Jack.
Yeah.
Right? Jack is also short for Joaquin. Joaquin is the opposite pillar from Boaz.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So you learn severity and mercy becomes the teaching tools for the masses. You move toward the pleasure and away from the pain. So you inflict the pain while you showing them which direction is the light. Because now they trying to get away from the pain, and now they gonna start focusing on the light ahead. Stop falling for the narratives of the satire. Putin just offered $1 billion to Trump for a joint venture project in association with the Greenland deal. Let that sink in. They got you thinking that they are enemy. They working hand in hand as part of the Earth Alliance to clean this shit up everywhere.
That's right.
Right? Now, the whole Iran thing, they're not going to buy my, United States not going to buy my Iran. Why? Because the people in Iran had enough of the bullshit. Because they tired of being shit on by a bunch of stubborn ass old bulls.
Makes sense.
An antiquated, false religious dogma. So they rebelled. Soon as they declared war on America, the people in Iran immediately hit the streets. Oh no, y'all done went too damn far. We not finna feed y'all Islamic World War III morals and dogma agenda. We not finna participate. And you ain't finna drag us in it. If you want to fight him, you go over there and put on some boxing gloves and fight Trump yourself. We don't know whether he's still living or not, the Ayatollah rock and roller over there. But they saving Benny Baby for last. Right? Because the Israel-West Bank war is a proxy war. It's not never intended to be won or lost. That's not Israel. When the Ukraine fall, Israel crumbles. Because those are Khazars. The war in Ukraine is the Khazarian override that's being exposed, but they keep trying to use the West Bank Israeli war as a diversionary tactic. Like we don't know that those people that's calling themselves Zionists, Khazarians, came from the Ukraine. He said that's their homeland. It's even recorded and documented when their king converted. Their king converted to Judaism because he didn't want to be a Christian or a Muslim. We don't want to talk about that. These people, along with the ones that's called Sephardi, the Sephardi is known as the Spanish Jew, but the pale Spanish Jew. The real Spanish Jew is a Morisco. or Morenos. He's the one in secret relation between blacks and Jews doing all the slave trade. In association with his Arab brethren like Tipper Tid. But we ain't supposed to even acknowledge any of that as part of the historical context of what we're dealing with over here. And that's why they teach it as a different branch of history. Because most people are going to study American history, they're going to become patriotic, they're going to believe in the American way, and ain't nobody along the way going to say, wait a minute, but what happened to the people that was already here?
Right.
They said they killed them off, but everywhere I look, I still see us walking around doing what we've been doing for thousands of years. We line dancing and stepping in the Midwest. We southern line dancing all through the South. We jigging, gigging, all this funky footwork that's natural to us that the other people got to learn the 1-2-step method to learn their culture. We just got to see it, and it infects us because it's already in us. It's getting activated by our brothers doing this particular dance. When Detroit, we jig.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is how breakdancing was birthed in the boroughs as alternative means for us killing each other. Let's dance out, which reached all the way to the Bay and gave us hyphy clowns. Dancing around, hopping around, and jumping around like Digital Underground. Right? They telling you the story. We still doing the same thing we always did. We can still see us doing it, and you can tell the imposter because they hate it every time they can't stop us from doing what we already gonna do. You can't stop us from being us. We who we are.
Right.
We know how we move. We know how to teach each other and talk to each other in the manner that get the message across of where the real enemy at and how we fighting him, where he came from.
Oh, somebody got a question right here.
No, sweetie, it's not just about dancing. The dancing is a side effect of the activity of the soul. The soul expresses itself in the artistic expression in the dances. And because they've made fun of us in all of their Western movies as having these powwow dances, but the stuff that we've always done, we still doing it. We doing it all over the land. We never stop being ourselves we at home. They trying to convince us to not express our inner soul because we can recognize each other. We know how we move. If a foreigner come through here, I don't care where he's from. Haitians is not foreigners to North America. Jamaicans are not foreigners. Cubans and Dominicans are not foreigners. When we talk about the original people of these lands, we are one people, but we got many branches to the family. Right? And if you look at how the conquest, you have to study Venezuela, study Brazil, look at how the amalgamation went, and you understand the one-drop doctrine was there for a reason. Because it was the remedy that they came seeking in order to heal the genetic defects of the grafted devils, so to speak. Because they was in the laboratory messing around with stuff they shouldn't have been messing with, and we became the ones responsible to clean it up because they was too stupid to figure it out. Stop using sulfur when you're trying to conceal your creations. That was the first problem. Mm-hmm. Right? And the deliberate shutting down of parts of the genome and the institution of new programs in the genome that controls people. Nobody can live their best life because they all arrested development retarded to sixth grade education level or 6-year-old education level. When you enter in the first grade, that's the first step of your intellectual detox from thinking.
Hey, Roy, I forgot that you had these right here. It's just a couple slides. I want, like, you just can say what you're gonna say about them right here. Like, we got to go over this too. This part of this whole evidence thing that we got going. Because I'm gonna cut and make stuff from this. So this is a flyer you sent me about the guilt. Like, the people coming. It's a whole bunch of people coming out the U.S. now, and it's all in the tabloid. Just ain't talking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the guilty. This one right here too.
Yeah. Okay, so you gotta remember, the police does not belong here. They are a foreign occupying military force. They don't belong here. They only here because they are the executive branch of the interim government. Now, if you want an example of how it worked, you have to go back to the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. That's the most recent example where you can see its totality. Right? The police is equivalent to the U.S. peacekeeping forces in Iraq. And the interim president of Iraq is equivalent to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces that was established here as the United States. The problem is that once the commander-in-chief finds a competent chief of the land that can clearly show you the fraud, he's obligated by the codes of military justice to restore the rightful owners to their proper position as part of the Republic Restored program. It's called the Restored Republic because it's under what's called the redemption right. The redemption right is explained in the Uniform Commercial Code, and how do you reclaim what was yours when somebody's squatting in your property, basically. You have to identify who you are, where you from, and then you have to see if there's a trail that can verify that all of this stuff is fraud. They already confessed to the fraud, right? The United States been found guilty of crimes against humanity and genocide for their activities on the land.
Right.
The United States is not the people. The United States was already ruled in the Supreme Court to be a corporation. Now, the corporation that was over Iraq was called Halliburton, who's also responsible for the rebuild in Afghanistan. The ones that was over here, the contract companies that came over here, started off the Northwest Trading Company, Virginia Trading Company, the Royal Company de Morocco, which we know, we call it Morocco, but it's a corporation. They was all fighting for the right to be the ones to govern over the land until the suitable tribal leader stepped up to reclaim the land. Right? In this struggle, they end up having wars in the transports of goods from America to England because somebody had to pay for this shit. And in the process, the Royal Company, the Royal Moroccan Company, is feuding with the Virginia Company and the Northwest Trading Company. Those two companies eventually merge with several other companies. One of them was a Dutch company, but they all merged. And then they became one major company. And then they were the ones who's being called the United States of America, because that's the name of the new company that the amalgamation and absorption of smaller companies to govern and rebuild the land was part of. Now, the only thing that they have to do is establish some kind of peaceful arrangement with the Spanish Moroccan company that's coming out of Northern Africa, from the ones who fled in exile from Spain during the Inquisition. Back then, there was no country called Morocco. It was called Al-Maghrib. There was no Libya. There was no Tunis. That northwestern portion was called Al-Maghrib when they was running them out of Spain. So when they went there, they came over here, and in the process, they warring with the company that's going to become the United States of America. And they need to come to some kind of agreement, so they met in Paris, France, to sign what was known as the Paris Accord, which was to establish a peaceful operations by treaty, commonly referred to as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. From this treaty, they won't interfere as long as when they divide it up, they get their due share. But they can't get it if we win. If we win the George Washington Challenge, they don't get shit. Right? But if we win the tribes, we get it all back. They lost, we won. I remembered, your ass is grass. So now we put it all back together. We reminding people of what happened, and we showing them where we getting it from, and then we explaining it to them different from how it was told as part of the false narrative. Because they had to keep up the false narrative in order to hold on to their last sips of power. There's no more sips. The actor that they used in the vaudeville reels, so that we won't know that there's other people that look like us in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
That was a psyop played on the people in America. And most of the people in Europe know was swarthy, because they be saying, they call him the Swarth. Right? And he had a genetic breeding program trying to correct the genetic defect in the people. This is where he got the blonde hair, blue eye Aryan race, when the Aryans is not blonde hair nor blue eye.
Mm-hmm.
The real Aryans are the people they call the Dravidians. But Enki's children was removed from power by Enlil's children in the Vermanus Wars. Mm-hmm. But we don't know nothing about that, so we won't know how to retell them what's taking place. The real Aryans look like the Jackson's 5 in 1973 in the family portrait. That's what they looked at like.
That's right, Rod.
Right. Now, they giving us Enlil stringy-haired kids, avatars, right? Calling them divine incarnations, and all they doing is taking what Enki said when he was the first fat Buddha, right? And as the first real Buddha, and then they retread him with Enlil's children. And now he looks Polynesian. Or he looks stringy hair Indian, Hindu. That's not the original Buddha. The original Buddha was called the Old Man Africa. But they call him that in modern terms. That's not what he was called back then. He was called the Aethiops. The Aethiops is where you get your word Ethiopia. And this is why the old maps at one time had Ethiopia scrawled across them for the entirety of the continent before they changed the continent's name to Al Sudan. Right? Then you see the old maps with Sudan in English character written across the continent. That's when after the fall of the Songhai, Mali, and Ghana empires. Right? When each one of those empires was in power, everything else was like outreaches. The government wasn't ran how government is ran now. The only purpose of government is to allocate resources to diverse places. Otherwise, you don't need it. Mm. Right? Most of the functions of government used to be a family's traditional job. They just passed it down in the job. Everybody was rich, but they had what was called the family business, which a lot of people last names was derived from what they families did. Mm-hmm. Like the tailors, they used to make clothes prior to the Anasazi, the great weavers of fabric. Or you got people like the goldsmiths who used to smelt the gold for Big Mama. And they was the ones who used to set the standard for the coins in which we used for trade. Right? Then you had the silversmith clan. They did the same thing with the silver. Right? The blacksmiths, they were the ones who smelted the iron and formed the iron into the metal artwork. Right? Those are under the crypt key. The crooked man, patron saint of the handicapped, and those who work with iron. It just so happened that bodybuilders in modern times are the offshoots of those bloodlines, like Ronnie Coleman. Right? This is where Big Tookie come in, because that's his function energetically to the earth, to be the patron saint of the handicapped and those who work with iron. And that's why he had to give Schwarzenegger the rub for Schwarzenegger to become great. Mm. He had to touch greatness to become greatness. But he just took it from our system to their system in order to help us with our system. Right? So everything ties back to us at the end of the day. And what's this next question?
Somebody said, "Yo, Rod, Wakanda. What you think about?" It says, "What tribe was Wakanda made about? You think?"
If you go to the movie, right, it's telling you Tupac life story from the time he was in the Bay. It pick up after he left Baltimore. He in the Bay now. This is when he first had the encounter. T'Challa first had his encounter at the beginning of the first movie. Right? At the end of the first movie, after he did all this fighting throughout the whole movie, he go back to the Bay, renovate the university or the library or something, and then he's talking about rebuilding the Bay Area. Right? And they keep referring to T'Challa as the Black Panther. Now remember, in the movie they thought he was dead, and then they went to the Gorilla Chief. It's telling you the story of Tupac. Basically. But they're using the reference of Wakanda, which is actually a reference to the iridium in Haiti, based on the components of the metals. Right? And this is why the one, when the girl became the Black Panther, she had to go to Haiti. She had to return to the motherland. So she left Africa, which we used to call the father's land, the land of Enki. And this over here is the original land of Isis, but she gave it to her baby boy, Tahuti. to be the guardian of the earth, he inherits the Americas. And she kept for herself Europe and Asia and Australia. And she assigned what we call today India and Africa to Inky. So you got different bloodlines, but you can only tell by the male haplogroup because all of the women trace back to the first mother. And after so many years, the first mother's blood DNA quantum reassembles based on the convergence and divergence of genetic pools.
Is he saying Hall? Hall?
Yeah, the last name Hall, like Prince Hall.
Yeah, that's Chata. Yeah, Chata.
Yeah. They used to be Longhouse lingo. The Hall used to be the Longhouse. And Hall is the English rendition of it. It's like a big ass pole barn. But that's where the political meetings used to, because it was always accompanied by a feast. So the Longhouse was the government headquarters. And then you had the Red House and the Blue House. One was your ambassadors and politicians who greet the strangers, and the other ones was the guardians of the bloodlines, your Red House. And this was responsible for cleaning up the genetic fuck up, the Red House. And the Blue House had nothing to do with it, but they can't do it without the Blue House. They need both sides of the family.